Well, howdy. Say, a bunch of you asked me questions about this and about that on the walk across America. So I compiled those questions for you, and I had my friend Steve do an interview for me to answer those questions. So here's part one of that interview right now, and part two next time. But before we get on with it, take a look here. Steve Lamott Photography. You can find him at Steve-O's Photo Cafe on Facebook. And Steve is the one that's interviewing me, so thank you very much, Steve. And here's part one and part two next week.
Mike, let me ask you a question. How long did it take to plan the route you went on?
Plan the route? It's a two-part question. The first part of the route from California to Pueblo is what I planned. Second part of the route was on the American Discovery Trail, which I didn't have to plan because it was all laid out. So the California to Pueblo part took me, I started in 2016 and went off and on, just pick a bunch of different ways to get where I needed to go. And I finished that planning process by the end of 2017.
Okay. A few times on your journey, you had mentioned a message that you were spreading. How did that come about?
Ah, the message.
The message, yeah.
Well, you know, this is funny because this journey popped into my head 10 years before I left. It would come and go, come and go, come and go. And then I finally realized, hello, McFly, I'm kind of slow. I realized that God was telling me something, so about a year and a half before I left, I said, okay, God, what's it all about? And you know what he told me? He told me that whenever you see somebody and they ask you what you're doing, let them know that he's shining his light on your path. He loves you very much, and he's warning all of us that time's running short. So that's the gist of the message.
At any time, were you scared going on this walk?
Scared? No, I wouldn't say scared. I think there were some apprehensions at the very beginning because I haven't done something like this. And so maybe for the first 6 to 8 weeks, there was still that apprehension there. But then I finally got my trail legs, so to speak, as far as my emotions go or my mental state.
All right, and what did you do to get yourself in shape? Now, I know from experience and knowing you, this isn't typically something you do. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you do much to get in shape?
You know, before I left on the trip, people would always tell me, well, you better start practicing. Have you gone to the gym? Have you done this? Have you been starting walking? I said, yeah, I'll get around to it. And in fact, I think there was, it might have been the second episode where I was discussing this, but basically I was halfway jokingly saying, well, I'll get in shape as I go. And that's what I did, is I got in shape as I went. You ought to go to the gym and start working out before you leave, they said. I said, I don't know. You ought to start taking long walks before you leave, they said. I said, yeah, maybe I will. Well, I didn't. I guess my mind was saying I didn't want to peak too early. I get in shape as I go. Oh boy.
All right, and the next one was, what was your first experience in stealth camping and how did you handle it? Had you done it before?
Stealth camping, no. So stealth camping, for those of you who don't know, is camping someplace where you're not technically supposed to be camping, like in a city park or along the side of a road. So I've never done anything like that. My first experience on that was alongside Interstate 10 and the railroad tracks out there near Palm Springs. I had a little bit of anxiety, but what softened that anxiety is that I met a hiker from the Pacific Crest Trail where I was crossing the trail there, and he happened to be coming down off the mountain, so we camped together, and so that made the icebreaker that much easier.
You know, Tabby and I used to watch your videos, and when you show us where you're camping, we would just get that feeling like, oh, you're right along a road or a freeway.
Especially the Navajo
But
Reservation.
that's pretty awesome that you accomplished. Something Tammy and I wondered, and also I bet most of your audience, were there any times when you were thinking you wanted to quit?
Wanted to quit. There was never a time where I wanted to quit. There were times that were challenging, and the physically challenging times weren't times where I would think about that. It was the mentally challenging time. So, for instance, a lot of times people ask me, what was your hardest part of the journey? And so they might expect me to say the physical ones like the Grand Canyon, the Salt Trail Canyon, the Rockies. I always tell people, well, no, the hardest part of my journey was going through flat Missouri along the Missouri River because of the heat, the humidity, and the mosquitoes. So at that point, it was kind of hard to trudge along. But you just work through it, just make it one step at a time and keep on going.
And I think that leads us into our next question. That's a long way to go by yourself. That's a lot of alone time. So were there a lot of music and audiobooks that you listened to?
No, no music, no audiobooks. People would ask me that, and I'm pretty comfortable with my own thoughts. But at the same time, I'm not necessarily there by myself. I'm there with nature. I'm there with the occasional person that might be around. And I'm also there with God. God, if you listen, if we shut off the noise and busyness of life, we can listen, we can hear.
So true, so true. Now, with us watching the videos again, let me reference, you seem to have met and interacted with a lot of people along the way. Do any of these people stand out to you, or any amazing? What did you run into?
It would be nice to be able to call all of them out individually. Thank you, guys. But, I think the people that took me into their homes as a stranger, hey, come on down, we'll feed you a steak and you stay overnight. Or there was a lady in, Karen, that's you, there was a lady in Indiana who happened across us at the post office, and her son had hiked the Pacific Crest Trail the year before. And he had always talked about trail magic, and so she saw us and she said, oh, this is my chance to do trail magic. So she brought us to her house for that night and fed us. And so, Karen, thank you very much. But everyone else, Tammy, everybody.
Okay, I've got to ask this. Did you really drink water out of cattle ponds?
Cattle pond, yeah. It sounds bad, doesn't it? If you look at the one video across the ranches, I think you can see that nice dark colored water in my water bottle. But I had the filter, I had the drops, so I had the 1-2 punch as far as killing whatever was in there. So look, I'm still around, right? Nothing growing in me, and I'm not glowing either.
No, you're not glowing.
Okay, let me ask you another question, because this is probably the most favorite part of me watching the videos, and I'm sure it is for a lot of others, is what did you think of the Grand Canyon? What was your impression?
Grand Canyon, I didn't know really what to expect. I mean, I'd seen pictures, and you look at the pictures and oh wow, look at that. But when you first get up to the rim and look down in the canyon, I mean, it's enormous, it's immense. And it's one of those feelings where you just kind of, for me anyway, you're sort of mesmerized and you just take it all in. But then when you go down, it's even a greater, because now you're looking up, and depending upon where you're on the trail, you're either at river level or you're a few hundred feet up, looking straight down. So I mean, the Grand Canyon and the Little Colorado River Canyon as well are just something that's it's immense, and it's awe-inspiring just to see how that can be like that.
But you did come across a part that actually scared me. It had to scare you. That one point where it's really tight going around the corner of that wall.
Oh yeah.
I mean, what were you thinking at that point?
That's kind of far down. A lot of my thoughts in the danger spots were more matter of fact. It's just like, well, that's the way it is, I didn't or fear didn't really enter into the equation. I know there was one spot in the Little Colorado River Canyon where it was kind of stupid, but I had to cross the river, so, waist high, I had to cross the river on my own self. But there's quicksand there, and so I got a little stuck there. Not terribly, but had to be careful there. And then the Rockies themselves, the Rockies were all the snow, no trail, the snow bridges, the snowshoes, never having done any of that. I remember consciously thinking one time, gee, I can see how people would think this was kind of dangerous. But for me, it was just like, man, just keep going.
That's awesome. Now, kind of going back to one of the prior questions, but it's on the Navajo Reservation.
Uh-huh.
Some people have mentioned they would have been scared to camp alongside the road in the Navajo Reservation. Was it scary? Did you have any problems on the Navajo Reservation?
You know, the funny thing is, a lot of people told me, oh, you're going to cross the Navajo Reservation? Be careful, because there's a lot of drunk Indians and drugs. And so that was in my mind, but, and the first night camping alongside the road was a little anxiety racking, but like everything else, you get used to it. So never had any problems, and it was actually kind of peaceful.
Because I got to intervene on this one. I mean, I saw the way you ate and the places you stopped and what you bought. How much food did you carry and how much water? I know you had, what are they called out in the middle of the desert?
Oh, caches?
Caches.
Yeah.
So is that what held you over mainly, or what did you do?
Two ways to answer that question. So out west, the western part of the trip is where I had the larger food and water carries. There would be times where I had 4 or 5, up to 8 days of food up and over the Rockies with me. And then in the Navajo Reservation, the northern part of the Navajo Reservation, before getting into Colorado, I actually had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of water that I was carrying, because that was the longest stretch without water. But once I got to Pueblo, Colorado, the towns just became 1 and 2 days apart, so I didn't have to worry about that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So in conjunction with the water and with the food, I was up to about 44, 45 pounds, which is not really too big. And after that, I was in the 20s on my pack weight.
And along with that question, I think one of the most important is, because you had your route planned, but there are places where you can't pick a town exactly so many miles apart. What was the longest you went without resupplying?
The longest without resupplying would have been the stretch between, I think Montezuma Creek, Utah, to Durango, Colorado. So I was carrying, I think it was about 8 days worth of stuff. And that's also the place where I had to take the 5 days of water. So that was a pretty long stretch.
When you went through the Rockies, that was one of the highest snow years ever. How did you get through?
Well, my original plan was to go up onto the Continental Divide and then walk a few days along the divide and down into South Fork. I think that the Rockies got something like 230% of snow that year. So I had to change that plan, and so now my new plan was to go up out of Durango and then up and over Weminuche Pass on the Continental Divide and then down into Creede, Colorado. The second day out is when I first lost the trail because it was all buried in snow. But fortunately, when I was in Durango waiting for the weather to clear, I'd found a mountaineering shop who let me borrow some snowshoes. So it's kind of like I was getting in shape as I went, but it's also I was learning how to use snowshoes as I went, because I never used the snowshoes. So basically snowshoes and dead reckoning. I mean, the pass is that way, so go there and then follow the animal tracks, the elk, the bear, the lynx, it's just do it.
I remember so many videos where you'd go, I'm going that way.
That way, yeah. Yeah, that's basically how that whole Rockies part was. It's just, okay.
Now, were there any situations where you look back and shudder? I mean, literally shudder at how dangerous they were? I mean, this is the first time you doing something like this.
Yeah. I mentioned previously the quicksand. So if I had, and I knew about the quicksand because I had read up on it before, so I was looking for it, so that I wasn't terribly surprised when I hit it. But even hitting it still, it's kind of like, I mean, quicksand, literally, you just start sinking really quickly, just like that. So that was a little scary. And then also in the little Colorado River section, there was a place where I was trying to come down off the ledge, and I was trying to get to some water because I was out of water, and I was shimmying in between big boulder and some bushes, and whoops, slipped a little bit. So got stuck between the boulder and the bushes, so I had to gingerly take the pack off, push it forward, and then get myself out of there. But yeah, that was pretty dangerous. And then at the top of the Little Colorado River and the Salt Trail, there was a cliff that I did remember reading about, and I couldn't figure out how to get up it. And then there were a couple guys that were coming up, and so they had come down that day as well. So we got up and over. So I guess that was the most dangerous section, and then the Rockies as well, with the snow and everything.
And the thing that makes me shudder is you didn't have a satellite phone.
No.
Nobody really knew where you were at any given moment.
Right.
It's just amazing, just amazing. Right. And you went through without any glitches or anything.
Well, before I started the trip, I said, God, okay, God, this is your trip, so you take care of it.
Yeah.
He did.
Okay. Where did you get, now this is going to be interesting to a lot of YouTubers, where did you get the music you used in some of your videos?
Music, there's a lot of sites out there that license music for either a monthly fee or you can buy the music piece by piece. But also YouTube has an audio library where you can download music for free. It's all royalty free. So I got the music, most of the music I got from the audio library at YouTube, and then some of it was copyrighted music, and I did get some copyright claims, but I challenged them and then they released them. So I just said they were fair use, and it was okay.
Okay, so while you were following the Santa Fe Trail, you mentioned its history, and a lot of people seemed very enthralled about it, especially you. I mean, you were enthralled about it. I mean, the viewers were enthralled about it. What do you think about that?
When you're a kid, and you're reading about the cowboys and the Indians and the settlers and all those kind of people, it was my first experience of coming across that type of history. Now, of course, in Southern California, we're all imbued with the missions and the Spaniards and all that. But coming across that history was really quite interesting. And what really struck it for me there is when I got to Bent's Old Fort, which was this meeting place along the Santa Fe Trail, where the two trails would split. There would be the Cimarron Trail, and then there'd be the other trail that kept going on. And when I was told while looking out the top of the fort at the Arkansas River out there just a few hundred yards away, and the guy saying, that used to be the border with Mexico. So you're thinking, wow, the border of Mexico is in Colorado? So, I mean, that's what really started it. And then as I was going along, it was just kind of an interesting thing the whole way. The people in Kansas are really tuned into the trail, and they have a pride about it. And in fact, I stayed with a family, Carolyn and Ed. I stayed with the family on the Santa Fe Trail, and they told me all about the history, and there's just so much to say. I gotta go do a different video for that. But read up on your history, Santa Fe Trail. It's interesting.
So, I think one of the viewers asked, and I think this is a really good question. Did you have any problems with flooding along the Missouri River?
Missouri River.
Yeah, it was at that time.
Yeah, there were actually a few other people that were walking across America at the same time as me. Most of them, they all but one were going east to west. And as I was watching their blogs and stuff, they were all to a T telling how they were having problems along the Missouri River because it was flooded from all the rains that they had gotten that year. But the interesting thing is, just a couple of weeks before I got to the river, floodwaters had receded, and then a couple of weeks after I got past, they came right back up. So perfect timing. Nothing happens by chance. All right, so that was part one of the interview. I hope you liked it. Part two next week, and where I talk about what do I talk about? Alone versus being lonely, the weather, and so much more. So stay tuned next week. But I do have a couple of favors to ask you, maybe 3 favors. Number one, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe down below there. And then the second thing is, click that bell for notifications. And then the third thing is, on the bell for notifications, there's something that says personalized, and there's something that says all. click on the all. Make sure you click on the all so you get all the notifications of the videos. And finally, thumbs up if you like this video. See you next time on part 2.